Some movies entertain you, some movies emotionally devastate you, and some movies are basically a case study in domestic abuse wrapped in a 90s thriller. Today we're talking about Sleeping with the Enemy, starring Julia Roberts, Patrick Bergin, Patrick Bergin's mustache, and Kevin Anderson. This movie is about coercive control, survival, and one woman realizing that the only way to escape her abusive husband is to fake her own death. And as a licensed clinical social worker, I'm going to walk us through the film, the psychology behind the abuse, and why this movie still hits so hard today. Alright, y'all, let's go for a walk. The movie opens on what looks like the most peaceful scene imaginable. Laura Burney is digging for clams on this beautiful beach while the sun is setting behind her. The waves are crashing, the seagulls are seagulling, just living their best little bird lives. Her husband Martin walks up calmly and calls her name. Laura smiles, teasing him that he's not exactly dressed for clamming. Martin apologizes, says he had to work even though they're on vacation. Laura doesn't seem bothered. She happily tells him about the clam recipe she's planning for the dinner party they're supposed to attend. And Martin casually tells her he canceled. They have other plans. She smiles and says that's fine. She'll just dig fresh clams tomorrow. They hug, they kiss. Everything looks very loving. Except when she pulls away from the hug, her smile fades just a little. Not enough that you noticed if you weren't paying attention, but enough. And that's kind of the tone of the beginning of the movie. Everything looks perfect, but something feels off. We cut to Laura getting ready for a night out. She's putting on her lipstick, looking good, looking cute. Martin walks in, compliments her dress. I wouldn't have thought of it, he says casually. Laura smiles and asks, you were thinking red? Martin goes black. Laura gently points out that the black dress has an open back and it might be chilly tonight. And what do we see in the next scene? They walk into the party and Laura has magically changed into the black dress. This is red flag number one. And this is our first little taste of coercive control. Coercive control is when someone uses manipulation, intimidation, and subtle dominance to take away another person's autonomy. It's not always yelling or hitting. Sometimes it's these little tiny decisions that slowly erase someone's independence and even their identity. And I'll point them out as we go. While they're at the party socializing, something else stood out to me. Laura keeps watching Martin, not in a loving, I adore my husband, my man, my man, my man sort of way, but more like she's studying him, reading his body language, anticipating what he wants before he even says it. She somehow knows exactly when he's ready to leave. And that right there is hypervigilance. She's not watching him because she loves him. She's watching him because she has to. Because her safety depends on staying one step ahead of his moods, which is just very stressful. It's a very stressful way to live. They go home later and start getting intimate, but the whole thing feels creepy and off. Martin is very aggressive, very controlling, even though to an outsider it probably just looks like a passionate married couple. And then he goes and plays that song. You know the song? The one that probably makes your skin crawl just from watching the movie. Go ahead, play the song. The next morning, Martin is working out like an absolute psychopath, while Laura watches the back of his head with pure disgust. She hates him. She didn't say anything in the scene, but that's the vibe she was given. Then we see the house. Towels perfectly aligned, cans facing forward, everything arranged like it's a military inspection about to happen. Martin calls Laura inside and asks if something is wrong in the bathroom. She looks around and suddenly realizes the towel stitching isn't perfectly aligned on the rack. She rushes to fix it and apologizes, and Martin just calmly says, that's why it's important to be reminded. Red flag number 2. This is coercive control. He's not screaming. He didn't raise his voice. He's keeping an even, calm tone, and that is just so scary and intimidating. It's just all about control. It's the kind that forces someone to monitor every tiny detail of their environment just to stay safe, which is like too much. And what makes this even crazier is the way Laura eventually escapes him, because the plan she comes up with is actually brilliant. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet. By now, you get the sense something is wrong here, and you're kind of on the edge of your seat. Mind you, it's only 8 minutes in, and we're already stressed. Martin heads down to the docks and starts chatting with their doctor neighbor. He's complimenting the man's boat, talking about how much he loves sailing. The doctor neighbor immediately starts glazing him up. "Oh, Martin, your house is the best house on the beach, blah, blah, blah. Glaze, glaze, glaze. You're such a lucky man, da, 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 da." And then he casually mentions that sometimes he sees Laura staring out the window. Yikes. Martin goes, "Oh, has she?" His abuser sensors are tingling, and he's immediately suspicious. The doctor invites them sailing that night, and Martin politely finishes the conversation and rushes back home. "Laura, you in danger, girl." Meanwhile, Laura is inside arranging flowers, completely unaware that Martin's paranoia train has just left the station. And this moment actually says a lot about her character. She looks peaceful, happy even, just arranging flowers and minding her business. And it struck me how much she seems to enjoy these tiny moments when Martin isn't around, these little pockets of quiet, because when you're in an abusive relationship, sometimes those small moments of safety become everything to you. And just as she's enjoying that moment, Martin's bitch ass walks in to ruin it. Trigger warning here, guys. Martin starts casually. "Nice looking man, the doctor." Laura is confused and says, "Doctor?" And you can literally see the fear wash over her face as she realizes what's happening. Martin starts accusing her of inviting the doctor into their house while he was in town. She denies even knowing the man. But Martin and his mustache are not trying to hear facts today. He keeps escalating, talking about how the doctor is young and handsome, clearly projecting all of his insecurity. And suddenly he explodes. He hits her. The vase drops, flowers and glass shatter everywhere as Laura collapses to the floor crying. This scene is really hard to watch, but it perfectly shows the cycle of abuse, the rage, the intimidation, the humiliation. And then comes the worst part, the apology. Martin suddenly softens his tone and starts telling Laura to smile. Actually, not even telling her, demanding. "Smile, you have to smile," he says, which is another form of coercive control, because the abuser isn't just hurting you, they're also trying to control how you respond to the abuse. Imagine someone hitting you and then saying, "Smile." Like, oh my gosh. And then Martin casually tells her that the doctor invited them sailing tonight. Now remember, Laura is terrified of the water. So this whole sailing trip feels less like an invitation and more like a punishment, disguised as encouragement. He's like, "I'm helping you overcome your fear." Sir, what a bitch. Just a bitch. But the best part of this scene happens after Martin leaves. Laura slowly stands up, gathers herself, and something shifts in her face. You start to see resolve. And right there, you know something is coming. Because eventually, the final tee-hee will belong to Laura. Laura heads down to the beach and just stares out at the ocean, clearly thinking about what she needs to do next. This is the moment where the wheels in her head starts turning. Later that day, Laura is sitting in the bedroom when Martin comes back into the house, speaking French. Bonjour, or whatever the hell he said. I don't know what he said. And Laura's face, pure disgust. She hates this man. She hates this man and his mustache, his voice, his presence. You can tell he makes her skin crawl. And Laura, we get it. He and his mustache makes all of our skin crawl. He's disgusting. Anyway, he walks in, being sarcastic, asking, "Is she all alone? Who else is here, Martin? The seagulls?" Laura doesn't respond, and he comes up behind her holding a bouquet of red roses. And the look on her face is basically like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Then he hands her a gift and says, I'm sorry we quarreled. Sir, I'm sorry, what? A quarrel? Is that what we're calling what happened? Does your mustache call it that? Laura opens the gift, and it's a goddamn nightie. Of course it is. He says, you don't like it? And she gives him that fake smile survivors know all too well. And she says, no, I love it. Then he unzips her dress and starts putting the nightie on her himself, kissing her and asking if it's too early in the day for this, as if she has a damn choice. And this scene is really disturbing to watch because it perfectly shows the cycle of abuse. Now let me put on my therapist hat, and let's take a walk through this together, okay? So the cycle of abuse has 4 stages. First, there's the honeymoon phase. Things are calm, loving, everything feels good. Then comes the tension building, where the abuser becomes irritated, agitated, critical, suspicious, controlling. Friction starts to happen. Then the explosion happens, the violence, the intimidation, the abuse. And then finally comes the reconciliation, the apology, the flowers, the gifts, the affection, the sex, which is exactly what we're watching right now. And this part is incredibly confusing for the abused partner because suddenly the person who hurt you is now the one who is comforting you. So the brain starts linking love and abuse together. The gifts, the apologies, the physical intimacy, all of it pulls the survivor back into the relationship and makes leaving feel almost impossible. Which is why so many people ask, well, why didn't they just leave? I don't understand. Why can't they just go? Because psychologically, the abuse and the love have become tangled together. It's just manipulation at its most insidious, honestly. And as a therapist, I've seen how confusing this dynamic can be for survivors. The same person who hurts you becomes the person who apologizes and comforts you. That's why leaving isn't as always as simple as people think. It really warps what is safe and normal for the abused person. And Laura is clearly miserable during this whole scene. This is degrading to her. This is humiliating for her. And it's honestly hard to watch. But eventually, she will find a way out. Laura and Martin are sitting outside getting ready to have dinner when Martin suddenly says, you want something? I know, my princess. And just just vomit all over his mustache. Laura is sitting there looking like a whole bad bitch with her 90s teardrop earrings, hair in a French bun, looking way better than Martin, which is why he's probably so insecure. She tells him the library offered her a full-time job, and Martin immediately shuts it down. You already work 3 mornings a week. I support that. What about our home? More coercive control. Notice the tone. It sounds like a discussion, but it's actually a threat. Laura finally pushes back. She asks him if dinner has ever been late to the table. Martin's bitch ass responds by bringing up the time she disappeared for 2 days 6 months ago. Which, by the way, she did because her mother was dying. And she couldn't even go to the funeral because Martin wouldn't let her. Martin says, need I remind you how worried I was? Laura looks him dead in the eyes and says, no, you reminded me enough that night. Whew, Laura, go on ahead, girl. Then he says, you can't think I enjoyed that. And Laura calmly replies, no, that would make you a monster. Shots fired! Go on ahead, Laura. Show him those teeth. Go on ahead. Martin tries to spin it and says maybe she's starting a fight just to avoid going sailing tonight. Then he adds, I'll think about your request. Sir, the request about her own life and job? He's a bitch. He is a bitch. Laura quietly says yes, and they prepare to go sailing. Before they leave, Martin tells her, "We will always be together. Nothing will keep us apart." Foreshadowing the hell out of everything, essentially. Later that night, they're sailing, and the weather is already looking suspicious. The water is choppy, a storm is rolling in, and the doctor neighbor is like, "Yeah, maybe we should head back." But it's too late. The storm hits, the boat starts a rocking and a rolling, remixing, sails flapping everywhere. Martin's dumbass falls into the water. The doctor pulls him back onto the boat, and that's when he realizes Laura is gone. He starts screaming, "Laura! She can't swim!" Search boats go out, helicopters, the whole operation. And then someone finds something floating in the water. Laura's life jacket. Grief-ridden, Martin returned home to scream Laura out at the ocean like a psycho. "Yeah, Martin, this is your fault. Laura's dead because of you." We cut to Laura's funeral, and honestly, the turnout is pretty small. Like maybe 25 people, which tells you a lot. She was isolated, cut off from friends and family, exactly how abusers like it. But then, the plot twist. Laura is not dead. We see a flashback of Laura clinging to a buoy while Martin is screaming on the boat like a psycho. Her voice narrates, "That was the night I died and someone else was saved." And then we see what she'd actually been doing the whole time. Laura had been secretly taking swimming lessons. We watch her swim back to shore in the dark, run into the beach house, grab the emergency bag she packed, and pull out a stack of cash. She cuts her hair, she puts on a terrible Dora the Explorer wig, and flushes her wedding ring down the toilet. Now listen, I'm going to read her for that decision later on. But for now, Laura is free, and she's headed to Iowa. On her way to Iowa, Laura meets an older woman on the bus who asks why she's traveling. Laura says she was visiting a friend who left her abusive husband. She describes this friend's husband as controlling, violent, the kind of man who promises he'll find you no matter where you go. The woman asks if the friend went to the police, and Laura laughs. And honestly, fair for laughing, because domestic abuse didn't even start being taken seriously as a crime until the mid-80s. And even then, the system was on some bullshit. So in 1991, definitely probably still on some bullshit, and kind of still on bullshit now. Eventually, Laura admits the truth. She's the one who was abused, and she feels ashamed for staying almost 4 years. The self-blame is really common for survivors. Shame, guilt, questioning your own choices, even when you escape. The psychological impact doesn't just disappear. And for Laura, this really is just the beginning. Laura finally arrives in Iowa and somehow rents a fully furnished house for $700 a month. $700. I mean, it's 1991. In 2026, the same house would probably run you about $3,000 minimum. I don't know what Iowa prices are today, but where I'm from in New Jersey, you're paying a lot for that. The house was fabulous. Anyway, we see a montage of Laura settling into her new life, grocery shopping, fixing up the house, enjoying her freedom. Her hair is naturally curly now, her skin is glowing, she's smiling. For the first time in the entire movie, she actually looks peaceful. One day after a shower, she looks out the window and sees her neighbor Ben, the town cutie. And I immediately trust Ben because he's outside singing the Jet song from West Side Story, one of the greatest musicals of all time. Laura watches him perform this whole musical number to an audience of absolutely no one. When he finally notices her watching, she gasps and ducks away from the window, but she's smiling. Later, Laura is picking apples from Ben's tree to make a pie when he catches her. He accuses her of trespassing. Laura's not amused. Ben says maybe they can make a deal because he likes pie. And Laura basically says, "No, bitch, I don't make deals," and drops the apples. Good for her. Good for you, Laura. Ben, you're doing too much. Relax, calm down, reel it in. Later, he shows up at her door holding the apples as a peace offering and tries convincing her to have dinner with him while also being a little too curious about her personal life. Laura says she'll think about it. Meanwhile, back at villain headquarters, Martin is sitting at work pretending to grieve, sad, depressed, pushing buttons on his computer. His secretary tells him he has a call from one of Laura's friends, and suddenly Martin learns something interesting. Laura had been taking swimming lessons at the YMCA. At first, Martin is confused because Laura couldn't swim. Then the woman mentioned something about Friday at 8 a.m. and said Laura told everyone her bruises came from being a gymnast. And suddenly Martin starts having a full psychological breakdown, like an outer body experience. The camera shows this by spinning around him, and I don't know what that technique is called, but it made me laugh. Martin immediately rushes back to the beach house and starts tearing through Laura's belongings looking for proof. While searching, he cuts his finger and goes to wash his hands, and that's when he sees it. In the toilet, her wedding ring. Martin picks it up and stares at it like Golem, holding the one true ring. My precious. Lord, Laura, you in danger, girl. Now listen, walk with me because I need to read Laura real quick. Because flushing that ring was dumb. And I hate when writers make smart characters temporarily stupid just to move the plot along. Laura planned everything. She moved her mother. She secretly took swimming lessons. She stacked her cash. She packed a go bag. She bought that horrible wig. She faked her death. Martin had no idea what she was doing. It was the perfect plan. She freaking crossed her T's and dotted her I's. And then you had her flush the ring down the toilet without even checking if it actually flushed? Why did you do that, girl? Ma'am. Ma'am. He could have found another way, though. Anyway, Martin found the ring, and now he knows she's alive. And that means he's going to find her. Laura shows up for dinner at Ben's house and immediately walks in on him putting out a fire on the pot roast. So this is already going well. They sit down to eat and Ben casually tells her he heard she was looking for a job and he might be able to help her find one at the university. Laura immediately gets suspicious. She's like, I didn't ask you for help. Ben says all she needs is a driver's license and some paperwork. Laura goes, I don't have that. Ben, still being a little too in her business, asks how she doesn't have documentation. And Laura shuts it down real quick. I don't want to talk about it. Ben notices a bruise on her face and asks if she's okay, and she says she'll be fine. Then he asks her name, and Laura tells him her name is Sarah Waters. Now listen, that is the fakest name anyone has ever heard in their entire lives. But Ben accepts it. So we move on. Meanwhile, Psycho-ass Martin and his mustache show up at the nursing home where Laura's mother used to live. He spins this sad little story about trying to find Laura's family. He's clearly fishing to see if she contacted them. Which, he didn't even know about her family. Anyway, the director tells him Laura's mother isn't there anymore. She was moved. And Martin goes, where? The director says, home, with you. Plot thickens, child. Ooh, Laura. Laura was smart. Later, Ben is waiting outside the library where Laura now works. He tells her he saw her at Walgreens the other day and was calling her name, but she didn't turn around. Laura claims she didn't hear him. Ben then goes full detective and says, your name isn't Sarah, isn't it? Laura insists she didn't hear him. But then Ben decides this is a perfect moment to confess his feelings for her. Laura is not having it. She tells him people don't really know each other like that. True. Ben says it doesn't have to be that way. If she can't trust him, it stops right here. And Laura calmly replies, it never started. Shots fired. Now, Ben, I'm about to read you. Look, I appreciate a sensitive man in touch with his emotions, but you barely know this woman. You're moving entirely too fast. And why on earth do you think you are entitled to have full access to her? Calm down, Ben. Cool your jets. I mean, you're fine, but you gotta read the room. Laura later calls the nursing home to check on her mother, but merely listens to her voice before hanging up, sad. Meanwhile, Martin hires a private investigator to track Laura's mom down, because of course he does. Laura and Ben reconnect at a town parade. Ben apologizes for being pushy. Laura accepts. They talk more, and Laura admits her mother is the reason she's in Iowa. And while this sweet little moment is happening, we see Laura's blind mother sitting in the nursing home knitting, and Martin is standing right in front of her. He found her. He found her. Ben shows up at Laura's house, banging on the door like the police. He drags her out for what becomes one of the most random but delightful scenes in the movie. A full montage of Laura trying on costumes while Brown Eyed Girl plays. And honestly, if you're watching this for the first time, you're thinking, how did we get here? What is going on? What's happening? But also look at the way Ben is watching her. Laura is smiling, she's laughing. For the first time, she looks like someone who isn't constantly afraid, which is just pure, it's pure. Ben is spinning her around, they're dancing, and she's genuinely happy. Later, they end up back at Laura's house. Things get a little heated, and I'll tell you, hmm they start kissing, tumbling onto the stairs, but suddenly Laura panics and tells him to stop. Now, Ben, it took you a little too long to stop for my liking. I didn't love that. But he does back off. Laura breaks down crying, clearly overwhelmed by trauma and shame. And let me tell you, Julia Roberts absolutely acts her ass off in this scene. Like, oh, your heart breaks for Laura in this scene. And Ben asks her, what did he do to you? And this moment really shows how deep the trauma still runs. Even though Laura escaped, trust is still incredibly difficult for her. The next day, Laura finally tells Ben the truth. She had a husband, he abused her, and she's not sure she'll ever feel normal again, which is pretty common. Ben reassures her she will, and slowly the trust between them starts to build. He even helps her find a disguise so she can visit her mother. But unfortunately, Martin is already on his way to the same nursing home. Laura is visiting her mother at the exact same time Martin arrives. Now my armpits are itching from the stress. This entire scene. Laura tells her mother she left Martin and has a new life. Her mom basically says you don't need a man to tell you your worth, but it's also nice you got a little boyfriend. Meanwhile, Martin is outside drinking from the water fountain like he's making out with it. Sir, why are you drinking the water like a cat? It was so weird. It looked so weird. It was weird. He then convinces a thirsty nurse to alert him if Laura ever shows up. And at one point, Martin and Laura are literally standing in the same hallway, right behind each other. But neither one realizes it, which is a close call. And by this time, we're so close to the edge of our seats, we are hardly sitting on it. Laura leaves feeling victorious, but Martin tricks Laura's mother into revealing everything by pretending to be a police officer. And then he almost smothers her with a pillow because he is a full-blown sociopath, and now he's moving into psychopath. Luckily, a nurse comes in before he can finish the job. He's completely lost his mind. He's gone. He even pistol whipped a random drama professor, thinking it's Ben. Sir, you're going to jail. The devil is fully out now. Later, Martin spots Laura and Ben at a carnival. They're laughing, riding the Ferris wheel, kissing, living their best lives while Martin and his mustache watch from the shadows like the world's creepiest stalker. Not only is he lonely, he's also angry. He's like Batman, but evil. Laura returns home after a night picnic with Ben. Something feels off immediately, and then she sees it. The towels are perfectly aligned. The cans in the cabinet perfectly facing forward, and she immediately knows Martin has found her. She runs toward the door but stops when she sees the boombox playing that creepy song. And Martin's voice says, "Hello, princess," and just ill. That's so. Ben knocks on the door. Martin forces Laura to send him away or he'll kill him. Ben starts to walk off, but then suddenly crashes back through the door to save her. But unfortunately, Ben does not realize he's dealing with a demon. Martin pistol whips him unconscious. I mean, you tried, Ben. You really tried. Martin starts rambling about their honeymoon while holding a wedding ring. But when he leans in to kiss Laura, she knees him in the groin. He drops the gun, and chaos begins. Laura tries to run, but he somehow trips her up and she goes flying into the table in the hallway. I don't know how she goes flying that way, but it's the movies. She grabs the gun, fires at him as he comes toward her, but misses. And even with the gun pointed at him, Martin is still being abusive, taunting her, saying, I'm impressed, because she shot at him. Then he laughs and tells her she won't do it again, which tells you everything you need to know about this man. Like a lot of abusers, Martin is still convinced he's in control. But Laura calmly picks up the phone, dials 911, while he starts telling her, no one will believe you, they're going to believe me, you don't have any power, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, hello? This is Sarah Waters at blah, blah, blah address. I've just killed an intruder. Literal shots fired. Then she shoots Martin. And even while dying, this man is still trying to grab her and shoot her back. But the gun jams. Like, sir, give it up. Golly, what an obsessive bitch. What an obsessive bitch. And that's the end. Laura survives. You know, she's thriving. She's living. She escaped her abuser. And she finally took her life back. She was a strong character. She became really empowered to escape the abuse. I love this film. I've seen it so many times. And one thing that I've always wondered is about Martin's childhood. If I had to take a clinical guess, I'd say he probably grew up with an authoritarian father who ruled with fear and control, and maybe he witnessed his mother being abused. That kind of environment can definitely shape how someone understands power in relationships. But then it's like that doesn't excuse what he became, but it might explain it. Definitely. R.I.P. Martin. I'm sure you and the devil are having a grand old time in the fiery pits of hell. It's what you deserve. And your mustache. Now, I do have some questions, like a post-epilogue sort of thing. Do you think Laura and Ben actually stayed together after all this? Or would Laura need time to heal on her own first? What do you guys think? I think they stayed together. Why not? Happy ending. And most importantly, I hope Laura got herself some therapy. Go to therapy, girl. You still got a lot to work through. Surviving abuse is one thing, healing from it is a whole other journey. It takes a lot of work. And I think she now that he's dead, Martin, she could really focus on herself. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Thanks for walking with me, guys. And I'll see you again soon. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't. Bye.